Okay, I wasn't planning to do a video right now, but it's something I saw uh, just when I was checking out the net and stuff. So this is an MMA video, and it's actually kind of a unscheduled one. But here's a thing I want to just put out there, and it's going to be kind of a rushed video, so I apologize for this. But Fedor Emelianenko, everyone, yeah, we all say he's the best fighter in the world. He's one of the best heavyweights ever, probably one of the greatest MMA fighters ever. So well rounded, one of the best all rounders in the sport, period. And when they talk about the UFC and Fedor, I know a lot of people want to see him there. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of Fedor, and I want to see him in the UFC. I would love to see him in the UFC. But there seems to be this misconception when this topic comes up: Fedor UFC, and Fedor in general. And there's this misconception that Fedor is the biggest star in mixed martial arts, period, right now, and has been. And I kind of don't agree with that. Now, that's not me saying he's not a good fighter, he's not what people say he is in terms of skills. I'm saying he's not the biggest draw and he's not the biggest star in the sport. And people are going, oh, well, when he goes to the UFC, he's going to make, you know, well, he's going to draw huge numbers for them. I don't think that's going to happen, personally. Here's, the, here, Here's what I think. He's fought in Pride in Japan for most of his career, and die-hard MMA guys like us will know who he is. We will know who he is because we follow the sport so passionately. But I mean, the casual fan that the UFC have attracted over the last maybe 5 to 6 years are not as familiar with Fedor, and that's a part of the thing. I think people only recently, in the last 3 years, have started to know his name because of the streak, because Dana started buying out all the contracts from Pride, and then because Randy Couture, who was, who's a draw himself, and everybody knows, because Couture then said, "Listen, I don't want to fight Nogueira, I want to fight Fedor," and then that was part of what led to his walkout, and because of that, then people started saying, "Well, who's this person that Couture wants to fight? Let's type him up." And then the exposure he got with the Affliction pay-per-views, and the exposure he's gotten with Strikeforce, and his name's only recently started to grow. But people are like, he's the biggest star ever, and I don't agree with that. If he was the biggest star ever, then Affliction's fortunes would have been so much different than what they were. There might still be an Affliction. Here's what I will, and I want to play devil's advocate here. I think more fans would probably know who Kimbo Slice is than Fedor, and I'm sorry to say that, and that's a sad thing to say. And it's not like I dislike Kimbo Slice, but I think there's more people who know who Kimbo Slice is because of all the hype around him and all the buzz around him. And numbers don't lie. He was on the Ultimate Fighter season 10, and when they announced his fight, it got 4.5 million views, which is actually a very good number for television. And I even put Kimbo Slice's name once on one of my videos, and within an hour I had over 100 and something views. The views just kept getting bigger and bigger. The thing is, when I hear the word draw, I mean, let me rephrase that. Being the best in a particular sport and a field doesn't necessarily make you the biggest name in the sport or in that field. It's a sad thing to say, but I mean, you can see it through a lot of things. Like in wrestling, Hulk Hogan is probably the biggest name of the sport in the sport of all time, or Steve Austin, and they're not necessarily the best. I mean, technically and in ring wise, people would probably say Flair and Steamboat and guys like that, and Michaels, but they weren't necessarily the biggest draws. In boxing, Roy Jones Jr. wasn't the biggest draw in boxing ever, to be honest, and he was probably the best super middleweight, heavyweight fighter in boxing at his time, and he was unbeaten for a while. But he wasn't the biggest name in the draw in the sport. When I hear the word draw, I automatically think of a Kimbo Slice, of a Hulk Hogan, of a Brock Lesnar, of a Manny Pacquiao, a Floyd Mayweather, a Ricky Hatton, and Oscar De La Hoya. Those names are names that if you put their name out and say that they're coming to this event, people run right away to see them. That's not necessarily with the case with Fedor just yet. And in a way, I kind of found it a bit ridiculous when, you know, I felt like M1 Global maybe well, allegedly were demanding a lot more from the UFC, and I felt that really the UFC in a way did stand their ground, and they can even argue, well, look, what numbers has Fedor brought into the table? What numbers has he drawn? He hasn't. It's just an interesting thing, and in a way, actually, Strikeforce. I have to say this too. When the summer was coming up and they were trying to negotiate and get some fighters under their contract, I felt they should have done more to bring in Tito Ortiz than Fedor, because Tito's name draws. And I know again people are going, oh, what are you talking about? This is a sport. And I know it's a sport. I appreciate the sport of mixed martial arts. But what you also have to understand is this is a business also, unfortunately. And a lot of decisions aren't necessarily made on skills and things like that, but decisions are necessarily made on when they open their account books and they look at the numbers and they look at the Nelson ratings and they look at what potential money can be brought in and what is aesthetically pleasing to watch. And a guy like Tito Ortiz delivers on those things. He's not the best in the world anymore, and maybe some people might say he's diminished, but his name does bring in an audience. I mean, his fights with Ken Shamrock. Look at the third fight, and they fought two times before that, and he destroyed him, and it got big ratings for them. And when he's on pay-per-view, when he fought Chuck Liddell, then that's another one. Chuck's a huge draw too. These guys are draws. Fedor isn't the draw. He's the best fighter in the world, but he's not the biggest name in the world just yet. Anyway, guys, I'm really sorry. I'll probably get desubscribed now by everybody for saying that. This is kind of a rushed video. I wanted to do a much longer video than this. Um, you know, let me know what you think, intelligently, of course. I promise to do a much more in-depth video next time. But it's just something to think about, and I actually urge fans out there to actually look at the numbers themselves. Look at the numbers that guys like a Kimbo Slice and the Tito Ortiz bring in comparison to the names, the numbers and the figures that Fedor Emelianenko brings in at this point right now. Even a Brock Lesnar, who's only had 5 MMA fights, is quite a big draw, and probably more people know than Fedor right now. Anyways, I'm going to go right now because I'm waffling and I'm probably going to be late to work, so let me know what you think. And yeah, hit me up again later. See ya.